Welcome everybody. Today we are going to talk more on the basics of macro photography along with few of the question and answer which you have submitted. Uh, Let me start with what is a macro and the confusion usually people have between macro and close-up. Now when we see all these pictures, whatever you see here today are all captured by me. So copyright belongs to me. So please don't use these pictures elsewhere. Um, Either as a screenshot or as a video. Now, coming to a picture something like this. This is a starting of a macro. That means at this magnification, it is a macro. Whereas when you go to this one, this is a close-up. It's not a macro. People get confused. What is a macro and what is a close-up? The definition of a macro is that any picture that occupies a full size on a sensor is a macro. Now, camera sensors differ. For example, both these pictures were captured using a cropped sensor, something like a 80D, Canon 80D or a D500 in Nikon, D7200, and that sort of cameras. So, they are all cropped sensors. So, sensor sizes really differ from one another. For example, a 35 sensor has got a 36 into 24 size. Whereas APS-C sensors, that is the cropped sensors, like the Canon one is 22.2 into 14.8 millimeter. So if I capture something which is 22 millimeter in size or larger, that is considered as a macro. Whereas anything smaller than 22 millimeter, then it is considered as a close-up. But in lay terms, what people do is they don't bother much about whether it's 1:1, 1:2, 1:2, 2:1. They call everything as macro. So clear definition of a macro is it should be 1:1. Now, in a smaller sensor, for example, if you are using a mobile phone to capture a photograph, then you can easily get a magnification. That's why a lot of people are using those magnifying lenses in front of the mobile phones and capture. If you are into macro videos, probably mobile phones are better and more useful than DSLRs. While using a full frame camera will give you a better quality of image, but getting the magnification and the depth of field will be a tougher job. The depth of field I will be covering all those points later. Now let me show you what happens when magnification. This is a ruler and I've used the 80D to capture this. Now you can see that 22 millimeter is the size of my sensor. So if I get 44, this is about 44. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 44 millimeters. So 44 millimeters will become 1:2 magnification. So it's a half size of a macro. It's still not a macro. So let me go closer. So now I'm reaching 1:1.5 magnification. If I go still closer, I occupy something which is 22 millimeters. So this is the area where the macro really starts. Until then, what we were using or seeing are only close-ups. This is a very scientific, technical way of defining macro. In common terminology, anything which is close-up is considered as macro. Now, the question is, one of the questions which I asked was, should we go for only macro lenses to get macro? How do you get this higher magnification? Can you use a combination of lenses? Can you use something like extension tubes, any other alternatives? So I'll cover up those technical part first before we delve into how do you really capture them? How do you go closer? How do you manage these insets? If you are exclusively specializing on macro, you might as well buy a macro lens. Now, how does macro lens differ? So these are all the macro lenses what you see, and they are from different companies. On the left hand side you have Tamron, then you have a Canon, then you have a Sigma, then another Canon. This is 180 mm Canon. This is 100 mm Canon. And most of these lenses are at the range of 90 to 100 mm. Sony has a 90 mm which I use on my full frame Sony cameras. Then Canon, I used to use this 100 mm on my Canon camera. This is Nikon 105 range, also comes into this same category. Sigma, this is a Sigma lens. Now, this is a specialized macro lens. Now, what this does is, this is MPE 65 made by Canon. This starts off at 1:1. I was talking about 1:1 earlier. So the closest range where it can start is 1:1. So this is absolutely no use to take any other photograph. Whereas all these lenses can also be used as a normal lens. Now the difference between normal lens and a macro lens is macro lens is more specialized to give a macro type of, that is 1:1 type of magnification. Some of them go beyond 1:1 like this macro lens. There are newer macro lenses which go into the similar, more than 1:1. But all in all, when somebody says macro lens, it basically has to give 1:1. But there were few companies earlier who used to market something which is closer as a macro lens. That's a sort of fake marketing. It's not really worth it to buy those lenses for macro purposes. So if you are exclusively spending money on lenses for macro, you might as well spend on these macro lenses. They can be used as a normal lens also. I'll give you some other set of lenses. That's again Tamron there. You have a Sony here, and this is another Zeiss lens. This is a Canon 50 mm lens. There is also so many other close-up lenses. This is Olympus 60 mm lens. So all these lenses help you to really go for macro. But if you don't have a macro lens, then you can use other lenses also. See, the difference between macro lens and other lenses is that macro lens allows you to focus much closer, whereas a normal lens will not be able to focus, say, less than about 2 feet or 3 feet, whereas a macro lens can go up to about, say, 1 feet. That's about 12 inches or even less. Some of them go very close. For example, this MPE 65 is in millimeters. So you have to have a subject somewhere very close by, then only you can take this capture. I'll show you some of the photographs which I have captured using MPE 65. Now, when you use other lenses, you can also modify them to become macro lenses. So one of the way of doing that is using what is called the extension tube. So this extension tube is basically a hollow tube. There is no glass here. So they come in different sizes. That's a 25 mm size, then there's 20 mm size, then 12 mm size, various sizes. So you can stack one another and make it into nearly about 56 mm larger size. Or you can remove the bigger one and make only these two, or just remove both of them and just make one of them. As you wish, you can reduce or decrease, increase the size depending on what you want. What they do is, the normal lens will be fitted to this end, and this will be fitted to the body. So it separates the lens from the body. So as you move the lens away from the body, the focusing of that particular lens characteristic changes. So you can focus much closer, much closer. So it becomes a macro lens. The disadvantage of using this extension tube is that your infinity focus goes off. So for example, you are doing macro and suddenly you find a bird somewhere in the nearby tree. You won't be able to photograph that, even though you're using a long telephoto lens with this extension tube. So infinity focus will be totally lost. To get the infinity focus, you have to remove these lenses, and then you can use extension tubes. Now, later I'll tell you one more device which can be used. It's called the Raynox magnifying glasses. Somehow my slides have really messed up today, so I'll show you 1 minute. Yeah, this is Raynox. This is a magnifying glass. This is a DCR 250 Raynox glass. The advantage here is you just fit it to the front of your existing lens. So what that does is, it just like a magnifying glass, it magnifies the object. This will magnify 2.5 times the object. There is also a DCR 150 which magnifies 1.5 times. So you can use any one of them. The advantage is your lens characteristic is not changed. Only the subject get magnified, and that's why you can use this as a macro lens on several of the existing lenses. Now let me go to one of the questions. Why do you need a flash, or why do you need a light? Why can't you use a normal flash, or why do you need to use a flash, and how do you modify a flash? That's what I'm going to answer with this question. How to have a diffuse light, because this is asked by a person who is already practicing macro, so he knows that you need have a light. In fact, having a flash is almost essential in macro photography. The reason is, we need, as we go very, very close to a subject, our depth of field becomes very, very shallow. That's a law of physics and you can't change that. So since depth of field is also controlled by aperture, you can provide a very small aperture like f8, f11, f16, up to f16 you can go and get the best depth of field possible. But as you reduce the amount of light reaching the sensor by going for a very small aperture like f11, you need to have extra light. The normal light which is there in the surrounding is not enough. So that's why you need to have flash. So one of the easiest flash which is quite common, which most of us are using, is these Godox flashes. Godox is a company which sort of revolutionized as far as the price of a flash as well as the quality of flash is concerned. The recent years, nobody really buys a proprietary, company flashes. For example, the Canon and Nikon, they all produce good flashes, but they are almost 3 times as expensive as these Godox flashes. There's one more advantage of Godox flash is that it uses a lithium-ion battery just like your camera. So the recharge time as well as time it takes between one shot and another shot is very, very fast, as compared to 4 AASLs, which most of the other flashes use. So, and plus the price is around, at the this is the high end of version of Godox. This is around 10 to 11,000 rupees. Whereas the same featured Canon or a Nikon or a Sony flash, if you want to buy, it will cost about 30 to 40,000 rupees. So this has advantage as far as that is concerned, as well as it mimics all the facilities what you find in the proprietary camera flashes. Only difference is, when you have a Canon, you have to buy a Canon flash, Canon version of Godox flash. If you have a Nikon camera, you have to buy a Nikon version. Otherwise, the hot shoe which fits into the camera will not be compatible. You can also go for the newer version of Godox. That's a round-headed flash. But beware that many of the accessories are different between the rectangular head and a round head. So this round head gives you a much better light. This is also a slightly improved version compared to the previous one. Or if you want to use something for flash, for macro only, you can go to this, two-headed monster lights. So this is a light which is produced by the company. I'm not getting the name. Anyway, it's a Chinese company. Basically, it has got these two heads, and there is also a LED light to help you focus. The Canon version is this, which I use, MT24EX. Quite an expensive flash, but very reliable, and it has got 2 heads and works fantastically to give you a overall light which is covered. Now, this DCR was the older. Coming to flashes. Now, using a direct flash straight away is going to give a very harsh light because you're very close to the insect and that light is unprotected. It just goes blasts on the insect. So you need to have some sort of modifiers. So these are all do-it-yourself modifiers which you can find on the internet, and what they do is they diffuse the light so that the amount of light which is falling on the subject is not very harsh. It's a softer sort of light, something like an evening light or an early morning light than a mid-noon light. So that's why uh, uh, you can create your own. All you need is some packing food. See, this is basically a plastic food packing bowl, which is then covered with styrofoam and fixed to the flash. This sort of modifier is available. This is just a plastic modifier which just covers it. It is not very efficient. These are all we did last time in our group. Do it yourself. You can do it. And then there is also a plastic modifiers which are available with the Velcro strip. Pringle boxes, you can convert them into a sort of a L-shaped modifiers. You can also use some sort of duct tape and modifiers, and this is useful especially if you are doing not just macro photography but other type of photography, because you can add polarizing filter, neutral density filter on top of the flash and get different effects. If you are into oil drops on the water and that sort of macro photography, this will be a fun device to use. Or if you are inclined in not doing this do it yourself and buy it, one of my friend Varun has created what's called a Beetle. He calls it a Beetle diffuser. I've used it recently for my curfew capture series. This was a series when the lockdown started on 22nd. When the curfew was announced, the voluntary curfew was announced, I thought I'll spend about 2 hours a day capturing macro in my backyard. So my aim was, in 21 days, I'll capture something like 50 insects. I got more than 80 species of insects in my backyard itself. So if somebody asks you where to find a macro photography, go to your backyard and start looking under the leaves. Obviously, you'll find a lot of macro. So this is a Beetle modifier. This is quite a nice one. It comes out folded, and then you have to have just have got a buttons. You just press all the buttons. There is also a small LED light which illuminates, that helps you to focus. There is a white diffuser in front which is sort of a concave, so that again helps you. And if you don't want a shadow under the insect, you use this particular modifier. You can also remove this modifier and put it on top if you don't want that, if you want the shadow, because there are users who find that having a shadow will give you sort of a subject a place where it can stand. But there are people who think that that shadow also has to be eliminated. So it depends. So if you don't want a shadow, you use this. If you want a shadow, then you remove this. You can contact him. He's on Facebook, Varun HB. Now, coming to, you have got the camera, you got the lens, you got the flash, you got the diffuser. Now you have to find the insect. Now, once you find the insect, how do you get the plane of focus? Where do you find the plane of focus? How do you focus it? How do you align it? How do you move towards it? How do you focus the insect? So this is all looks pretty complicated, just to explain. But in field, it is easy once you get to know how you do it. So here is a diagram how to capture. Remember, this diagram is not up to scale. I have not found an ant which is as big as a camera. Just to show you the picture. So how do I focus? Now let's assume that I have a diffuser, which probably is most of the time it's connected to my hot shoe, not standing on the side. I may use tripod, may not use tripod. My usage of tripod is something like this. If the insect is stationary, if it is cooperative, then I use tripod. The advantage of a tripod is that it gives me much more stability. But if insect is very finicky, if it is roaming around, running around, then it is no use chasing that insect using a tripod. You are going to create more havoc than without using a tripod. So most of the time I use camera handheld. So I have a diffuser and a flash which is fitted to the hot shoe of the camera. Now, when I see the insect, I don't use the autofocus mode in the camera. What I do is I put the camera on the manual mode. I switch off the image stabilization. You can call it IS in Canon or VR in Nikon, OIS in Sony, and all those terminology. Just switch it off, because when you're going that close and trying to hold your camera still, the camera inside starts thinking that there is a vibration, and it will start compensating it even though there is no vibration. So you don't need um, image stabilization for macro photography. So think about this. The image stabilized macro lenses are expensive. There are a lot of non-image stabilized macro lenses which are cheaper. So since anyway you are going to switch off the image stabilization, you might as well go for a non-image stabilized lenses which are cheaper and which are easier to manage. Now, when I approach insect, there are several angles of how do you approach. I'll show you how you approach them. But basically what I'm doing is I'm moving my camera forward and backward. I'm not really using a focusing ring at all. So I have fixed my focus to a point, and then I move camera forward and backward so that the subject comes into focus. So when the subject comes into focus, especially the eye of the subject comes into focus, then I click. And this is how the image will look. So this is a very shallow depth of field image where only the eye of the ant is in focus. Now, when the eye of the ant is in focus, you can see the hind legs are out of focus, the forelegs are out of focus, just the eye, just a little bit of the antenna is in focus. Now, this is a shallow depth of field, what you get. When you go extremely close and this close, okay? So, this is good if you just want to show the eye of the insect. This is fantastic when it comes to spiders, because jumping spiders have got a beautiful eyes, and where they look at the camera, they look at you, and they give you a particular look which looks very, very fascinating. So when you try to show a subject with just the eyes, then this sort of angle looks very good. Most people go for this angle. It's the same ant. So I moved myself sideways. I didn't change the depth of field. So what I got is a shallow depth of field, but whole ant is covered. Now compare the previous picture and this picture. So what do you see? This picture has a better depth of field, even though everything remains stationary, same. The aperture is same, shutter speed is same. Usually the shutter speed I keep is 160th of a second. Aperture, it varies depending on the insect, subject, and subject distance. Usually it is f8 to f60. Now next comes this angle. Now in this angle, you see slightly more, something different has happened. This is what we call as a magic angle in macro photography. If you search for magic angle macro photography, you don't get anything. I don't know what other people call it, but this is, I consider it as a magic angle. This is around 30 to 45 degrees angle in all three directions, that is X, Y, and Z axis of the subject. So that angle gives me a head which is in focus. The the tail end which is in focus, and also many of the legs in focus. So that way uh, you can get a better uh, image. Now here I have not increased the depth of field. The depth of field is controlled by the aperture as well as how close you are. So in this case, aperture was f I think 6.5 because I wanted very shallow depth of field. That's why I went for 6.5. Normally I go for f8 or f11. Now I'll show you another picture, which is this. Now this is using a flash. So I have put the flash, and this antlion, which has now become a lace wing. Remember those antlions in the sand where we used to play around? That becomes, as an adult, as this a graceful insect. It's got a wing which is very shiny, iridescent. With all the flash and all the diffusers, every trick I was playing, it was reflecting the light back. The wing was reflecting the light back. So even with the softbox, the effect was not good enough. So finally, I had to use a polarizing filter to get the effect something like this. Fortunately, the antline was stationary. It was waiting for me. So I was able to go back and get a polarizing filter, put it across, and then get rid of that violet tinge what you saw. So there are several ways. In fact, the macro photography is an amalgamation of various other photography genres. So the polarizing filter, which I learned in landscape photography, also came useful while shooting insects. So this is just one example of how do you use a lot of techniques to get at the end the better picture. So for me, that most of these are right at the camera. They are not manipulated. I can always would have gone to a Photoshop, removed that tinge easily, but that's not my intention. Most of my photographs, you see, at the most I use Lightroom just to crop and do some of the uh, finishing touches, but I don't manipulate any of the pictures. Now, what do you see in a picture? So in a macro photography, the plane of focus is basically to tell something about the insect. Now here the insect is sort of sleeping, hibernating. This is a wasp. It sleeps in the night on dry twigs. So I wanted to capture the wasp, and also capture the night. So the background is black. Even though there was a bright light here, there is a wall here, the background is black because I could go close and put a flash, and the flash was not good enough to reach the background. So that's the advantage of making something black. Whereas if you want a picture something like this where the background needs to be green, not black, you first adjust your parameters to the sunlight in the background and then use flash. So when I use flash in such a way, I get both the background well lit as well as the subject well lit. Here the background has gone dark because I focused only on the foreground subject. So in the advanced classes, probably I'll explain you how to do both these things, but that's how you really look for the subject and then express the subject in the way you want it to be expressed. Now, you don't have to show the whole subject. In a macro photography, even a very small area really makes a lot of difference. This is a caterpillar. I could have shown the whole caterpillar, but I just wanted to show only the head of the caterpillar and the leaf behind it. So that is basically how you want to show the subject. So that is your idea of presenting the subject. You need not go through the standard way that I'm going to show a caterpillar, whole caterpillar from head to toe and all the surrounding. That's up to you. If you want to show, you can show. You can also show something upside down, like this spider, which was very curious about my photography and came and gave a pose. And if you see in its eyes, you can see twin lights. These twin lights are basically the MT24EX flashlight which are basically twin lights, and they are being shown in the eye as a twin. Uh, Remember, on internet there are a lot of pictures of insects with water drops on top. Many a times they are pet insects where they put a water drop using a dropper and then take a shoot. But if you really go into the rainy season and try to capture them in their web, so this jumping spider had a drop of water on top of it, and it was wishing me with these drops which were there. It just rained in the morning, and then we had a waterfall workshop in a place called Mala, and this was a capture and in the forest. Always when you capture a subject, it's better to capture with something it's doing. So that way you are telling another story. It's not just about the insect, it is also about the what it is doing. So here I can see this damselfly is eating another insect, and with that I could capture. And this is that same magic angle I was talking about, which got me a very good capture. And also you can go for, this is not a macro lens. I was using a non-macro lens on a Fuji camera to capture this mosquito on a natural light. This is using a natural light. I didn't use a flash. So there was a sunlight which was falling on the leaf, and the mosquito was sitting. So this is the maximum distance I could go to capture it. I couldn't go closer than that. Whereas if I had a macro lens, I can do this. I can go this close and capture the mosquito. And most of us don't go that close and look at the mosquito's color. It has got an iridescent blue color. So the flash really enhances it. So I didn't remove that blue, but I just wanted to show you that blue color. And some of the spiders are beautiful in a totally different way. So you can go extremely close to them and do a capture. This is a very common spider in the garden, Lucage type of spiders. So you can go and capture them. It builds a nest late evening, so you have to go after sunset just to hunt for these beautiful spiders. This is a literary nymph. It's a plant hopper nymph. I found it on a leaf. So then I picked it up and got it and put it on a white sheet of paper, just to show the transparency. But unfortunately, even with the white sheet of paper, the transparency was not obvious enough. So the next trick what I did was this. Put a flash under the paper so that it passes through the, it's almost like an X-ray picture. You can see how transparent it is. Remember, I don't harm these insects. I just take a photograph and then leave it. Most of the time, most of my photographs are in the wild. I don't bring them into a studio. I don't do a setup. Like many people who do, they put it in a fridge, they sedate the insect and then take a photography. That's unethical. That should not be done. You can do it sort of a studio in the wild itself. Put some flashes, put some studio lights. You can create an environment around that. So this is one situation. After this, I left it back in the wild, in the same leaf where it was living. There is another trick to avoid having shallow depth of field. For example, this fly I was capturing, the depth of field was not enough. Like I couldn't get the hind wings correctly. So there is a trick called focus stacking. So I'll show you the image. This is the first image. This is where I was focusing. Point of focus is here. So the second picture, the point of focus is here. And the third picture, the point of focus is somewhere at the back. Sorry, this next picture, the point of focus is in the back. So when you combine all three of them, then you get this one. So there are softwares which Photoshop is one of them, and Zerine Stacker is another one, which allows you to stack these images together and make it into a one single image. Only problem is the insect has to stay still. If it's moving around, you won't be able to get a perfectly good stack. So this is unstacked picture. So you can see I concentrated more on the face, but a little bit of the back is out of focus, but it's fine because most of the part of this flesh fly is basically the face and the red eyes. So that's where you concentrate and then you see. Now, how do you approach a subject? This is a tough one. The reason is many of the times the insects are afraid of you, humans. We have destroyed insect world in such a way that every insect hates us. Now there is a way of avoiding it. One is to wear masks. So now we are used to wearing masks, and one of the best masks available for photographers is a camera. Now, with the camera in front of your face, you can approach an insect very, very close as this. So normally, when you go very close, as close as this, the dragonflies usually run off. That is because they can see your face and they know that you are a human, and then they know that you're going to either kill it or harm it. So that's why they'll run away. So at the most, you will get a picture something like this. But if you want a head-on picture, something like this, go as close as possible. That is only possible by holding a camera in front of your eyes. Don't ever bring down the camera, just hold it in front of your eyes and then keep moving forward and forward until you get exact focus on the eyes, on the face, or wherever you want. This is a very shallow focus, this thing, concentrating only on the eyes and the mouth parts. Or if you want the regular shot, you can go for the side and then approach. Always look for insects which are doing something. For example, here there are mating beetles. So the beetles can be approached quite variably with using various techniques. In this case, unfortunately, I didn't have a diffuser, but I had a flash. So I want to show you, what happens when you use a diffuser without any modifier. So since I didn't have any modifier, what I did was I took my handkerchief, tied it in front of the flash and tried to use it. That is a sort of a diffuser, make yourself diffuser sort of thing. Because I could get the mating, but I didn't have the tool with me. Now you can see on a shiny surface, it's still reflected. Okay, then you try to change the angle. So this is the magic angle I was trying to, but then I tried going for the top shot. But top shot also resulted in having lot of shiny this thing, because these leaf beetles are very shiny. So it's very difficult to avoid without having a good diffusing material or a soft box. So you can start taking different angles. Now, one of the mistakes what most people do as far as any photography is concerned, not just macro photography, is get satisfied with one single image and then think, okay, I got the fantastic image, I don't want to try anymore. All you have to do is go around and then you'll get various other angles. And this was the final angle I got, where one of the beetle is looking at me, the other one is sort of shy, and they're still mating. And the beetle mating is quite a common phenomena. And in fact, I have written a blog on how they really mate, and their genital parts are like a saw. So if you want any details, you can check my website where I've talked about this particular image. You can also get some of the images here. These red ants, they are capturing another ant. They killed him and they are transporting it to the web. So there are two images here. There are only two ants which are basically carrying that black, or there are more than two ants. The problem what happens is there is what's called a rule of third. This is what most people follow, and then they don't think of any other rules. There are thousands of rules. This is what's called a rule of odds. If there are four subjects, then usually people lose interest. If it is three, people have better interest. So I just concentrated on two red ants carrying one black ant. That will be a better picture compared to the previous one. So you have to think of compositional values. You have to think of angle of light. Here the angle of light is coming from this angle. It's not coming from the camera side. So that's why it gives you that particular look. What I was doing is I had a trigger on my camera and I was holding my flash as well as the diffuser on my left hand and directing the light as I want. So that's how I captured this. Now I was showing you that extremely magnifiable lens called MPE65. This is a capture using that MPE65. What you are seeing here are aphids. They are very, very tiny, small aphids, and they are being attacked by ladybug larvae. So these insects here, and there you are. The ladybug larvae are attacking and feeding on these aphids. So the aphids are basically, they suck sap out of plants, and they are quite harmful for the plant. So these ladybug larvae basically kill those aphids and then feed on them. So this is extreme close. Now you may be thinking that I need to invest so much. I need to get all those lenses to come with good macro setup. Think initially I told you about close up and macro. So you need not go for the macro as such. Macro is a separate genre itself, and most of the time you need to be spending quite a lot on these lenses and other equipment. But if you don't have macro lenses, still you need to have some ideas. You can stick with close-ups, look through patterns, look through various things which nature provides us. This was a series which I wanted to have the leaf pattern as well as ant. Now here the light is from the other side. So I have used the flash. I've put the flash on the back of the leaf. So the light is passing through the leaf and the ant is on this side. But what you are getting as an ant is just a silhouette of ant. You can't see details of ant, but only a black structure of ant. So check few of the photographs. I'll just pass them pretty fast. This is a series of photographs showing ants as well as leaf patterns. Or you can do a portrait of ant. Here, what I really did was a studio portrait. I put a 90 centimeter softbox and a 80-200 lens near a track of these weaver ant who are going up. So as they were passing, I was taking photographs. So it's a trial and error. You can't really focus because they'll be running across this particular vine. The only advantage is they had no space to go away. So each time they passed, I was getting one picture at a time. So this is what I called as a portrait of an ant. There are several of them. I'm not going to bore you with that. Just showed you one picture just to show you how we can use a large softbox and a studio light to make a portrait of an ant. Or if you're patient enough, you can go and capture something like this. A capture of a spider capturing a mosquito. So this is what this question really begs to answer. So how we can compose to get an interesting photograph when the bugs are moving so much? I agree, bugs do move so much, but they have a purpose on their movement. So either they'll be feeding on something, they are going hunting something. So once you understand that particular bug and learn the life history of that particular bug, you can anticipate what they do. For example, that day in the evening, I was trying to take photograph of this spider. And at that same time, when I was shooting this, I was getting bitten by mosquitoes. So invariably, I was thinking one of the mosquito might really go and fall into the web of this particular tetragnathid. So I waited there, and soon enough, I saw a mosquito falling into the nest. And immediately the spider came. So I captured the mosquito as it was falling in the net web. And then the spider came and started pouncing on that, bit the mosquito, and then started building a nest, building a spider web around it. So it creates a cocoon around the spider web, and that's a cocoon which is being created. And I was constantly shooting this one after the other. I could have created a video, but I always find it's much more comfortable to create a sequence of photographs than doing a video. And there it is, fine. So this is next shot. So that was the final moment. The mosquito was then sucked in by the spider. Then I had to leave. I also got quite a lot of mosquito bites, but this mosquito kill was really worth that price. You can also get, if you start chasing ants or spiders, you will get to see these fantastic images of, one ant trying to kill another ant, trying to take it to feed the nest. This is a spider where there was sort of a history that, it used to kill few people uh, using its bite. It's called the toilet seat spider. Uh, it was way back, much before internet started. People used to send some emails of this fake story that, this is an Indian spider which came to US, and in America it's hiding in one of the airports toilet seats and it's killing people. People believed, and they started destroying toilet seats in those airports. So that is probably one of the first such fake news which spread around. So this spider, Asimonia spider, I wanted to photograph as though it's sitting in a toilet seat. No, I can't carry this spider and put it in a toilet seat. So I was looking for a moment where I could get a spider sitting next to a leaf which looked like a toilet seat. So this is the series which I created, and you can see that. Again, you can see, if you see the eyes of the spider, you can see twin lights. Those are the twin lights what I used to capture. This is a thorn mimic tree hopper. It's got a thorn-like structure on the head. So when the birds who try to capture that come to find this particular insect, they think that is a thorn and they just leave it. This sucks sap out of the plant. So this is called a thorn. In fact, from this angle, you can see only one of the thorns. It's in fact, it's two thorns, thorn-like structures on the head. It's just a sort of a mimic to save its own life. Next question was any tips of the time of the day or a year on when one can get specific type of bugs. I mean, I recently observed a butterfly out in the morning and afternoon, but not in the evening. All these insects have got their own routine, their own timing of the day. Most of them are early morning or late evening. If you are a late riser or an early sleeper, you will miss this fun at all. For a macro photography, you sleep in the afternoon, wake up early morning, or wait till late night. Because morning and evenings are the best time where these insects will sit and wait for the sun to rise, because their body heat mechanism requires some amount of energy from the sun. So when it's really cold, they are sluggish. So you can easily capture them using in early morning or late evening. Having said that, many of the dragonflies are more active in the afternoon. So depending on the insects, the spiders are more active in the night. So depending on the insects you are looking for, start studying their behavioral pattern. And with that, you can get to find out where they exist, where they are going to stay, and how you can capture them. Now, for example, I was showing you weaver ants. Okay, there is a spider which mimics that weaver ant, and this is that spider. So this is an ant mimic spider, and it also has a fantastic looking back end, but looks like a joker. So something like this. So you can capture that ant mimic spider in a manner how you normally capture any of the spiders, or you wait for the ant mimic spider to move around. So you sit in one place, let the insects start moving around, and then capture various moods and styles of that particular insect. So here are a few of them I just captured. So, similarly, here there is a beetle, and this is what I call as a magic angle. This angle allows you to capture most of the insect. It's not on the front, it's not on the side, it's not on the top. It is at 45 degrees in all three directions. So this allows you to capture most part of the insect without getting blurry. So now the leaf is blurry, but the insect is sharp and contrasting. Another thing you have to notice is the background. Whether the background is sort of, this is a insect and the background is complementary. So it's opposite of orange, the green there. So obviously this insect will stand out. But I'm not satisfied with one single picture, something like this. Now here I was using a large softbox similar to what is that Beetle softbox, but this is not a Beetle softbox. This is a do-it-myself softbox which I created long back. This gives slightly better results than whatever I created till now. I can give a particular model idea how to do it. Many of my friends have already created that. So this gives fantastic results. You can see the light which is just skimming across and very soft. So this is one angle, but I'm not satisfied. So I wait there, start looking at the insect from different angle, start going low, start looking from below the insect so that you can look at the underside of the insect as though insect is looking at you. Or you go behind the insect and then look at the leaf, or you go on top of the insect so that you look how the insect is looking at something else. You can go behind the insect, you can go side of the insect, you can also go back into the same angle, or you can go full flat on the insect and showing that four black spots, or you can go to the side of the insect. So this is basically, I have answered most of the questions. So if you have any questions, you can ask me in the chat. I'll answer. So that's most of my presentation. If you have any doubts regarding these questions, you can ask me in the chat. Let me go to the chat and start reading them. Okay, I think I have answered what is macro. If you go magnification higher than 1:1, then only it's called a real macro. But in layman term, anything close up and macro is both called a macro. Does a Beetle diffuser fold flat so that it can be carried in a bag? Yes, it flow. It's like almost like a file. It will fold up, so you can carry it. Only thing is, it's about 15 inches, so you have to carry it in a suitcase. It may be difficult to carry in a camera bag, but it can be folded slightly and put it in a camera. No, not a problem. I have a Godox LED light. Can this be used for macro photography? LED lights are constant lights. The problem with the constant light, it's yes, it can be used. There is no harm in using it, but you need to have a diffuser. That's one. The second thing is you need to keep a higher shutter speed. Probably that will sort of go against the power of the LED lights. Most of these LED lights are not really that bright enough. If it is bright enough, probably you should be able to use it straight. Are focus stacked images accepted in photo contest? If it is a photo contest which says that you can't edit them, no, they won't. But if it is a photo contest which allows you to edit, yes, stacked images are allowed. In most of the extreme macros, people only use stacked images. And stacking, there is a stacking software as well as stacking machine which allows you to stack hundreds of photographs together. How do you get a black background? Is it because the low power of the twin lights? Uh, if you are something like this, your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO settings, if you make sure that with the flash off, you take a picture and the picture comes out totally dark, black, then your background will be black, because that is what the background is. The ambient light is managed by the background, and the flash only manages the foreground. Your subject is in the foreground. So I think one of these days we'll talk about how do you use flash, and what is ambient light versus the flashlight uh, configuration, and how it really merges with one another. So that will give you a whole idea. How do you make a background go black or background go like what is here? Okay, Senthil is asking what's the best aperture to shooting macro. There is no such thing as a best aperture. For example, there are a lot of people who are shooting macro flower photography, where they want very little part of the petal of the flower to be in focus and the rest of the flower to go out of focus. They'll be using like f2.8. For them, that works because only a very small area of the flower needs to be in focus. Whereas if you are shooting an insect, something like this, you need to have something close to say f8, f11. You can go up to about 14 aperture. So there is no single aperture which is good enough. So if you want a deeper depth of field, go for a smaller aperture. If you want a shallower depth of field, go for a wider aperture. That depends on how close you are. So if you are far away, then the aperture really changes the depth of field. If you are close by, again the aperture and depth of field, both of them change. So depth of field is basically on how much of subject to camera distance is there plus aperture. These two parameters are part of depth of field. So that depth of field is the one which gives you this particular uh, idea of what to use. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to use something like this. You can we do stacking in Lightroom? No, Lightroom doesn't allow you to do stacking. You need to go to Photoshop to do a stacking. What will be the percentage of post processing for macro photography? In my case, I use only Lightroom, unless if I'm doing the stacking. I also use another stacking program called Zerin Stacker if I'm doing a stacking. I don't use Photoshop to manipulate anything, and 99% of my work is in Lightroom itself. 1% of work, there may be some spots which I want to remove, or somewhere if the light is really causing too much of harshness, I want to reduce that. Probably at that time I may go to Photoshop, but recently for last 2 to 3 years I'm using only Lightroom for most of my work. Senthil is also asking, while doing macro, because of the wind, focus is hunting. Can we use AI servo mode in such a case? You can use AI servo mode. It is possible, but I think most of the time your camera will fail. Ideally, what you can do is you keep a sort of a wind preventer on the other side, or the trick what I use is I hold my camera on one hand. That is a right hand. I hold my camera. Left hand, either I hold my flash with the diffuser, or sometime I hold the leaf. For example, this leaf is moving around in the wind. What I do is I hold the part which is not visible in the camera with my left hand, and then I focus. So if your camera and all the setup is too heavy, then you won't be able to do that. And I also use hand strap, which takes most of the weight out of my hand. So I'm not really carrying the camera, I'm just holding the camera. So that's what I'm using. Okay, Venkat is asking, if we use a powerful zoom lens and stand far away, can we simulate macro lens? Even if partially, yes, you can catch photos of insects without them moving away from us when standing close. Yes, it is possible, but you won't be able to get macro level, because most of these uh, zoom lenses take 100-400 lens. Say either Canon or a Sony 100-400 lens allows you 1:4 magnification, not closer than that. So you can only go to 1:4 magnification. So you can't go to 1:1 magnification like these macro lenses. Now this, remember, this is not a crop. This is a full frame. When I went this close, I captured this insect in this full frame. I didn't crop this image. So all these images are full frame images. There might have been very little crop somewhere, but it's very marginal crop. So this sort of close-up is not possible in any one of the zoom lenses. But using extension tube, you will be able to use extension tubes, stay far away, not as far away as a normal zoom lens, but you should be able to get as close as this. You can probably get 1:2 magnification, that is half size magnification, using uh, zoom lenses with the extension. Any other question? Yeah, Babu is asking, modern cameras having an eye focus option, will this be usable in spider photographs or macro lenses? Autofocus utterly fails in macro. So never try to do autofocus, because it cannot understand the eyes as good as normal animal eyes or human eyes. I don't know. I haven't tried Sony animal eye on insects. Uh, I'll try it on and see. But my idea of a macro photography is not using autofocus at all. So that's why even using AI servo mode and other autofocus all fails. The surefire way of focusing an insect is go into manual focus, fix the focus of the lens using the focusing ring, and then bring the camera forward and backward until the insect comes into focus. So that is the best way of focusing for any insect. That's easiest way also, since most of us come from other genres where autofocus is in use, like sports photography or action photography. We think that that same sort of focusing mechanism works in macro, but I think this method I have tried and tested over last 8 to 9 years of macro photography, various techniques, but this is the one which really holds good. Let me show you one or two slides. If you are interested in spiders, there is a webinar coming up on next Friday. Me and Javed Ahmad are doing an online Zoom seminar. So if you are interested in introduction to common spider families in genre and natural history observation and the importance of reporting them and a question and answer, you can check this particular webinar. It's on next Friday, 6th of June. Same time, 7 to 9. If you want any of the details, sorry, electricity went off, but we'll come back now. So if you want to know more about this, whatever slides which I've shown, they're all there in my blog, drkrishi.com. So you can check my blog for detailed versions of each one of them. There I have given how I captured them, what are the settings, all the exhibit information is available. All you have to do is just click on the image, it will pop up, and at the bottom you see the exhibit information. So if you want to know what aperture I used, what shutter speed, what camera, what lenses, what flash I used, everything is there. And my website also has a lot of information about macros. So if you are interested, just please go through this website, drkrishi.com. I've been blogging almost every week since 2006, mostly on animals and wildlife, and lot on macros. Basavaraj, when we are using manual focus, we need to adjust the diopter, which is not so accurate. I didn't get it. What diopter are you talking about? Most of the time, you go for the closest focus in the focusing ring. So let's assume that your closest focus is about a 1 feet distance. So you put your camera to the closest focus and then go forward and backward. I don't think it's a diopter really makes that much of a difference. Diopter is basically used for the viewfinder. That's where the diopter is. I think you are confusing diopter with something else. So you mentioned switching off the IS. Yes, yes, Shajin. Switching off the IS is the most important part. One of the reason why you get a shaky macro photographs is because of the IS. It is counteracting with what you're doing. I also have an old Nikon 28-105D lens, which gives a switch for the macro mode from a normal mode. Yes, it is effective. So when you switch on to a macro mode, it allows you to go closer. It is not the true macro, but it allows you to go much, much closer. It will give you probably 1:2. I'm not very sure, but probably 1:2 magnification. So, which is not possible in a normal mode. 24-70 mm f4 lens in Canon and 28-105D lens in Nikon. These both allow you to go for the macro mode. Shrikant is asking, when we are using manual focus, we need to adjust the diopter, which is not so accurate. I'm not. I think he's repeating that particular question. Now, Basavaraj is asking a question. There are telephoto lenses with macro capabilities. How they work? This is a fake marketing. They are not really macro lenses. They are just marked as a macro lenses. They are not. There was a really fashion in the early days with any of the lens which had quite a close focus. Close focus in the sense 1 meter. 1 meter sort of closer focus, calling that particular lens a macro lens. Recent years, that particular trend is gone off. Now they are not asking that particular question. Can we use a live mode for macro? Yes, live view is another big boon in recent days, especially if you have a tiltable screen, something like 80D, 90D, Canon, where you can tilt and keep it at a particular angle as you are going low. In fact, most of these insects are at the ground level. So your camera will be at the ground level. Remember, you have to at the eye level of the insect. When I'm shooting something like this, I'm at the eye level of the ant. So that particular insect picture requires you to be at that eye level, and you using a viewfinder will be pretty difficult. Initially, I used to use a sort of adapter for the viewfinder, which allowed me to see something like a periscope. I still have that. I don't use it now. But if anybody wants to use it on a Canon cameras, I can give it to you. Since I'm using Sony now, Sony and Olympus, so it's of no use for me. I still keep it with me.
Doctor, you also would like to highlight on people
yes,
being
right angle viewfinder. Yes, I have a right angle viewfinder. Yes. Okay, Shrikant, I didn't get your question. Can you repeat it?
I mean, for macro, one of the more important aspect is being fit and fine, because when you're down at that angle and waiting for the ant for minutes together, you really have to be fit and fine.
Yes, that gives me that, but I exercise what I need. So I usually put a mat underneath my body if I'm lying down for a long time. Usual yoga mat, what you get in any of the malls, are fine. That will help you not getting wet from the ground. Also, it will avoid having a sore knee, because if you squat for a very long time on a hard soil and wait for this, I mean, most of my macro sessions last about half an hour to 1.5 hours per insect. So that's why it's I spend quite a lot of time to capture the insect in the perfect way I want it. So that's why you have to be fit. You have to have less of a tummy, which I still have. Sometimes it works as a cushion, um, and then you have to be fit. So it gives you a motivation to be fit. Plus, it also helps you uh, in this. Apart from shooting for passion, love, and hobby, can we go into the commercial area? Unfortunately, not many people really want to buy an ant or a spider picture to hang on their wall. But macro photography also has a lot of other genres which are built into it. Smoke photography is one of them. Oil on water photography is another. Product photography with extreme macro, for example, watch components. All those things are part of macro photography. So you will be able to use that particular option to really get exactly what you want. Vinod is asking, yes, need to be fit and fit. Lots of practice to hold breath, minimum 10 seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. I hold breath nearly 30 seconds to get that capture. That time you will be holding breath, because even breathing slightly will cause a hand to shake, and with that, your macro will go for a toss. And this I realized, especially after I shifted to my Sony A7R4. This is a 60 megapixel monster. So what happens here is even a microscopic shake will be visible in the picture. Initially, first 20 days of after purchasing that particular camera, all I was getting was a blurry picture. Despite my experience with so many years of practice, I was thinking, there is something wrong with the camera itself, and I had to give it back. But then I realized my technique has to improve along with the number of pixels which are there in the camera. So more pixels you have, more trouble you have. So you can blow up this picture, into a huge stadium-sized picture photo at the end while you're printing, but you have to have proper technique, and that technique comes with practice, lot of exercise, lot of patience, and that keeps you quite healthy, as well as uh, you know uh, the the happiness what you get after a session of a macro photography is so interesting. It's difficult to express. Thank you. I think we'll call it a day.